safety tools and, and session 0, they're not about limiting the game and telling, having any one particular person dictate to everyone else what can be in the game. It's an experience where you guys come together and agree upon things, right?
I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
And I'm Nerdarchy Steve. Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. All right, so what are we talking about today, Ted?
We got another Zoo Mafia design diary. This is number 11. We're getting, sailing through these.
Yeah, and today we're going to focus on safety tools for Zoo Mafia RPG. And I mean, it's safety tools in general, but we're going to talk about specifically for Zoo Mafia and why. But before we even do that, we should probably tell people what Zoo Mafia is in case they've never seen any videos about it.
I was going to ask that exact question. So Zoo Mafia RPG is a game that we are in development of. You can find the other Zoo Mafia design diaries here on the channel, as well as our alpha playtest here on the channel that we do on Tuesday nights. So Zoo Mafia is a hack of the Monster of the Week, or the powered by the Apocolypse engine games, with some tweaks, some twists, and some fun ads.
Yeah, basically your zoo animals, you're going to go out and do crime, but don't let the humans find out.
Indeed.
All right, so first of all, why do we think safety tools in general are important to RPGs?
Well, safety tools are important because you never know what things are going to trigger for people, what things are going to cause somebody to have problems when you're dealing with violence and problems in a tabletop role-playing game. So using these safety tools allows for someone to say, look, I'm not comfortable with this. If you're doing a session 0, just don't add this to the game. I don't want to see it happen. And clear communication is great. But if something doesn't come up in your session 0, other safety tools allow you to be able to say, look, I'm not really comfortable here. Can we fade, or can we cut? Can we, do something, because I'm no longer comfortable.
First of all, these tools are important because we're playing a game. The purpose of playing a game is to have fun, to be entertained, and it is for enjoyment, right? It's not to traumatize our friends or be traumatized by our friends. We don't know what people's lived experiences are. We don't know what they've gone through. We don't know, what material might be problematic for them, what material might not be problematic for them. So safety tools is a very useful way of us, addressing these problems as they come up, so we can focus on the thing that we're here to do, and that's to have fun with our friends.
Yeah, and that was the point that I was going to get at, is most likely you're playing, your role-playing games with your friends, and your friendships, those relationships should be important, and making sure that your players, your friends, are happy and comfortable while you're all having fun is far more important than, trying to seek a traumatizing moment just to make a more impactful story.
Yeah, and I would say it's actually kind of more important if you're not playing with your friends, because at least your friends, you might know about them and what they've been through and be able to account for that. But if you're playing at a convention or running a one-shot with people you're not that familiar with, chances are you don't. So, I mean, it's out there to use the resources. If you're talking about your home games, this is a thing you can decide with your groups, whether it's something you want to use or don't want to use. But for Zoo Mafia, we'll get into greater detail why we think we need to use these and at least address it with the game in general. But before we do, we wanted to let you know, if you want to stay up to date with Zoo Mafia and you would like to get those free quick start rules when they drop, the best way to do that is to join the Zoo Mafia newsletter. There's a link up here, a link down in the description, and you can go check that out. The only thing we'll pester and bother you with is Zoo Mafia, so become part of the family and get in the know.
All right, so without further ado, let's kind of get into it. So what are the core differences between the Zoo Mafia role-playing game and other RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons?
So I would say the genre, right? It's a crime genre. You're playing criminals.
So I think that criminality, enters into a larger aspect. And I know that there are crime elements that are done in D&D, but I think it goes a little bit further. Once you enter into more the term crime, more mafia, that's where it gets a little bit more brutal. Certain tactics are going to be not only allowed, but almost expected. And, just out and out killing without any kind of remorse, I think doesn't necessarily have to be a part of the game, but easily could be.
Yeah, it's not even just, it's not even just killing, really. I mean, when you're talking about, playing criminals, you're not the good guys. What are the things that, people are going to be comfortable with at your table. What are the things that are going to be okay? Because when you're dealing with illicit goods like drugs, and in this case, alcohol in this game, addiction is a theme that could come up. Prostitution, how do you guys feel about that in your game? We get a player that's like, I really don't want to see a lot of that in the game. So it's been something that we don't really address. You mentioned violence and as being a crime is going to be a big part of it. More than likely, if that's an issue, this might not be a great game for you. There's going to be gambling. Those are just the things I can think of off the top of my head.
All right, so you mentioned that session 0 and what things are allowed. So you kind of have to ask what crimes are considered good or usable at the table when you're playing, and that's what you can kind of focus on.
Yeah, in session 0, we kind of did that. What kind of crimes do you want to see your characters committing? What kind of crimes do you want to stay away from? And that we didn't do our session 0 publicly. We did that privately, and then we started playing the game. And that was definitely one of the questions that I asked. And people are like, want to commit a heist, want to do a train heist, want to steal things, want to do this. Maybe someone's a hitman, so carrying out a hit might be a thing that they want to do. And and that was where someone was like, yeah, I definitely I know prostitution would probably be a thing, but it's not something that I want to be involved with or see. So that's fine. It's easy enough to leave for us to leave that out. Or if you're like, nope, this prostitutes all game all the time, this is not a good game for you, we need to maybe you should sit this one out or whatever, but that's part of the conversation. Safety tools and session 0, they're not about limiting the game and telling having any one particular person dictate to everyone else what can be in the game. It's an experience where you guys come together and agree upon things, right? And if things can't be agreed on, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But the GM should be like, oh, I don't want to run this game then. Or the players that have the issues should be like, I'm going to set this game out. This game isn't for me. They'd be better off finding one that is. And of course, you don't really want to surprise your players with this stuff. I think we've all heard the horror stories at conventions where the GM is doing these things. And at the end of the day, when you evaluate all the information and data, it's like they just want the shock value. Mm-hmm. And, there's a way, I feel like there's ways of doing that without intentionally trying to traumatize the people at the table.
And, it doesn't have to be these grand sweeping gestures. If for some reason one player's really, I want this particular element in the game, even if it's a single session, and one player is like, I am adamantly against that, I can't be a part of it, if you can come to terms where it's well, if it's a player issue, could you plan this for when that player might not be able to be there? And, is that okay for the player? Or does there more of a negotiation need to happen where it's no, I don't want to be a part of the world where that element is a part of it, because then that still feels like I'm contributing. So there is always going to be a back and forth. And that's why session 0s have discussion. They have these elements. And, if you're playing with friends, then compromises can and should happen.
So next up, what are some safety tools? Now, when we put out the rules for Zoo Mafia, we are, and probably even in the quick start rules, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about safety tools. We're not going to make any new safety tools. There's a lot of people out there that are a lot smarter than us that have already done this. And maybe we'll include those resources for people to check out and find out what fits with their table the best.
Right.
So we're not going to reinvent the wheel there. There's probably people that are actually trained professionals that have also done this. So we're just going to recommend you do that, but we are going to discuss in the sense of why it's something you might want to consider, why you might want to introduce them into your game, and why we think they're a good idea. So I feel like there are 3 different categories that safety tools fall into. It's before the game starts, during the game, and after the game.
Right. So during the game, if something is really, it's pushing buttons, you're having some kind of an issue, similar to, where it comes up in sports, you lift up the X card, you say, look, this needs to stop. and boom, you go to the next scene.
Very conveniently, that safety tool is called the X card. And like you said, you either have a card you hold up, there could just be an X card sitting on the table that someone touches. And when that happens, all you do is you kind of like fast forward that scene, you move on, change the scene, whatever.
Right. And, this really is, when it's done well and the DM, is observing the table, notices this, like, you can't have any repercussions on the player that's feeling like they're having some kind of trigger or problem with it. It has to be accepted that, look, for whatever reason, I'm not going to press, I'm not going to pry. This is having an effect on me and we need to move on. And everybody needs to just be okay with that.
So lines and vowels is another one, and this is one you would do before the session. So lines are just hard no's for you, and you just don't want to be in a game that involve them. And as the GM, you should respect these. And if maybe their line is a line for you, then you need to speak up and tell them, this is going to be in the game. This game may not be for you, right? And again, this is just like coming to agreement of what you guys want to do, how bad you want to play together. There's nothing wrong with, two adults agreeing that, what, this game is not for them together and one of them can move on. Not a big deal. Vows is the other part, and this is... While this is not something is the hard line for me, a hard no for me, it is something I do not want to spend a lot of time on, and I don't want to do it in scene. Like for us, we don't do a lot of romance stuff. We're not necessarily against it, but we don't do a lot of romance stuff. And if you're actually talking about actual like sex and intimacy, we really don't do it at all. But if it comes up in the game, we handle it as a vow. And this has just kind of been an unspoken rule at our table for a long time. Before safety tools were really a thing that we were aware of and got more widely used. Now we know, like, oh, that's a vow for us, and we just fade to black on that. We don't really need to know what's going on with the bard, and the barmaid or the barkeeper.
The two of you go into the room together. Okay, the camera, if you want to use it, switches to another person, and literally, since it's all narrative at that point in time, if the player wants to assign what transpired, that's fine. If there's a story element moment there, like there could be a conversation that's had, later or after or, what have you. But, the actual things that players don't necessarily feel comfortable discussing at a table around their group of friends, it's just like, all right, we're gonna move on to somebody else.
And then lastly, we have the debrief, and this happens afterwards, right? And this is just like after a session, the GM can check in with the different players. Players can check in with each other, and you can actually just go revisit those lines and vows. And the beautiful thing about all three of these tools is you could use them all together.
Absolutely. So this debrief allows you to really feel like, was everyone comfortable with what happened? I know that, as much as I love my fellow players with Zoo Mafia, we are not all exactly on the same page in regards to the level of violence and the things that, we want to have happen. So far, everybody's having a grand time with this story, and, we're all loving the campaign, but, it's going wild and doing crime, and there is a lot of bloodshed, there's a lot of death. It's what I was expecting when I made my character, and I'm playing to that level. Other characters are not really looking for that. So having this ability to debrief, making sure that everybody is okay, and there was something where like some bad stuff happened, and I checked in with, my fellow players of like, hey, is everybody okay here? Just to make sure. I'm not the GM, but players are allowed to make sure the other players are comfortable too.
Yeah, everybody can do it. Anybody can do it. It doesn't even have to be a formal thing. It could just be like, after the game, hey, everybody good? Anything going on? Anything you liked or didn't like? And then also, I would say as a GM, I would recommend, I can't tell you what to do, but I would recommend kind of having an open door policy so that people can come to you and speak to you, not in front of the whole table. Mm-hmm. So they can, just send you a message or whatever and be like, hey, this thing was kind of an issue for me. And then, you guys can decide in your game how you want to handle it. If you're the GM and you just want to be like, okay, we can like fix that, tone that down, whatever, or be like, oh no, this is good. This is just the beginning, right? This is going to be prominent. Maybe that player wants to bow out, right? And so it's all about communication, right? Before, during, after, and to me as a GM, I want everyone at the table to have fun. And I don't need to shock people for me to have fun. And also, like, even if I do want to have those aha moments and kind of like crazy things happen, I don't really want it to be at the expense of any of my players at my table. That's my personal view. Yours might be different. But here are some tools. They're out there. You can use them. I recommend you do. Do you recommend any safety tools that you want to share with the Nerdarchy community down in the comments below?
While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Even go ahead and click on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video.
Quick reminder, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we drop new videos here on the channel, so come on back. Can't wait till then, no worries, we've got you covered. There's a card up here where you can check out the last design diary for number 10, where we hack Cypher System to create Zoo Mafia.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.